All right, you guys, welcome to this current installment of Truth Noir. As always, I am Norm, and talking about some important issues tonight, not the weird stuff we've been doing, but there's one that has been a problem for quite some time now that no one talks enough about ever, and I'm joined tonight by an old friend of mine, former co-worker, that was closely involved working in this exact same kind of thing, trying to help out where he could. And I'd like to introduce you to an old friend of mine. There he is, Mason Chevron. How's it going, bud?
Good.
So, yeah, we, among many other things that we've done in the past, one thing that we did together and where I met Mason here is we worked for a nonprofit organization that worked exclusively trying to help homeless, unaccompanied children in the Los Angeles area. They operated some homeless shelters specifically for children. And what we would do is we would be the people standing in front of grocery stores with clipboards, taking donations to help raise funds to keep these homeless shelters going. And we had some interesting times doing it, but it was a thing that we both felt strongly about, still do, and so we wanted to share a little bit of facts and figures and hopefully get you guys as pissed off as we are that like this is still such a massive problem in this country. So I'm going to kick it over to Mason to share some stories about the response you would get from people as you were standing out there trying to raise money for homeless children.
Well, doing that job and doing the job I'm doing currently is actually pretty similar.
Really?
Because you get to see the entire array of people.
Yeah, all the walks of life. What are you doing right now?
Driving for Uber.
Okay, so yeah, you're dealing with the people trying to get to work. You're also dealing with the people that are belligerent drunks, and yeah, seeing all sides of it. So kudos to you on both fronts, man.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, one thing that really struck me, there were two things that struck me about working at that nonprofit like we did, doing the thing that we were doing, was number one, and yes, there was a lot of like good, compassionate people that you meet that, you know, would hear the spiel, you know, and be like, oh, that's great what you're doing. Let me give you as much as I can. And there were a lot of those people, but there was also just the scorn and the attitude of people that were more seeming to be of the opinion of like, how dare you ask me for money for these, you know, for these people, for homeless children. We would get talked shit to, and why don't those people just get jobs? And so yeah, it was an interesting circumstance to be in. Have any horror stories you care to share?
Well, actually, the worst experience I had, we exchanged no words with each other.
Really?
And I don't know if you believe in like the energy thing, and
oh yeah, sure.
It's like they try to do research on it, but I don't think we'll fully grasp what exactly is going on.
Talking about just picking up a vibe from someone.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think it's deeper than that. And we've seen how water can change to the the energy that's around it, like
Oh,
on
yeah.
a cellular level.
Absolutely, yeah. We've seen documentaries on that, and yeah, I absolutely believe in that kind of presence of energy to affect on a very fundamental level the things that are around it. So
Right. So I mean, that was it. It was the darkest energy I've to this day ever felt in my life, and all he did is walk by me.
now, this was a person that you were going to try to take a donation from.
Oh, I
or-
was nowhere close to ever trying to talk to him, but I was doing the job at the moment. I was holding the clipboard, had the T-shirt on.
Yeah.
But I mean, doing that job long enough, you can just pick up on vibes like in an instant. And
For sure. Yeah, there was one that I had, and we would where we would meet at for work in the morning was in it was Culver City, near Beverly Hills, very well-to-do part of town. And the places that they would send us to, and they called it canvassing, where we would go and ask for donations, were also in very well-to-do areas around the town, with the presumption that, well, you know, these people have a lot of money. Surely they would be willing to part with some of it to help such a worthy cause as operating homeless shelters for children, you guys. But a lot of times we found so often that just was not the case. There was one time, personal experience that I had, you know, among many, but these people drove up, it was at a grocery store, and they drove up driving like a brand new BMW 7 Series, and, you know, started off the way, you know, we usually do. Hi, you know, we're, you know, raising money for the homeless kids. And right off the bat, it was all just attitude of like, well, who's going to pay for my college students' tuition?
right.
And, you know, and I was like, well, you are. That's your kid. Like, just like you buy them food and clothes and stuff. I'm not asking you to put these kids through college. We're trying to help get them off of the street.
Right.
And yeah, it was just amazing the genuinely negative response that we would get from people. Again, a lot of really good souls that, you know, would give what they could, and you know, but also a surprising number, and quite frankly, an unacceptable number of people that, instead of just saying, you know, no, I don't have anything to spare, would like argue with you that like you being out there was not the right thing to do and was a burden to them.
Right.
And so it's you know, and here we have the problem still going on quite rampantly. In fact, the numbers that when we first started have increased.
Yeah.
One thing that I also appreciated about beginning to work at a place like that, because I didn't know any of these statistics or figures, or what I came to know as the stigma of being homeless. And that was something that they instilled in us at the very beginning. Want to go over a little bit of that for the audience at home watching?
Well, I can actually speak on this from a bit of personal experience. I recently began living in my van.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I still haven't got over the stigma. I mean, it might just be coming from my own self, which could be the same for them. It comes from yourself. You feel bad within your own self, like they're cast down eyes towards you. Like,
Sure, yeah.
like you're not where you're supposed to be, you know, and that's heavy. That's a heavy thing to feel. Like, you can't wake up and say good morning to the first person you see. Like, that's hard because you feel so badly about the situation that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, because for the very most part, like, most people aren't born homeless, right? Like, you had a home to live in. just like so many other people did, and whatever circumstance brought that about, has now put you in this situation. And they said there were two aspects of it. There was a psychological toll, that kind of beats you down personally, but then there's also the social stigma of not being able, or being extremely like astronomical odds against you being able to get out of that situation. And so those were two aspects of it that they told us about. And the social one was the one that really affected me, just as far as a level of perception, because you don't realize that, if there was ever a time in your life when you were like, well, someone asked you for money, you're like, no, go get a job. The presentation of it to us really kind of brought it home, even if you had never dealt with that experience in your life personally, of, well, no, you can't just go get a job. When you consider a person who is homeless, right, so they don't have a mailing address, generally speaking, they don't have, if you don't have a home, it's questionable whether you have access to showering facilities. So if you walked into a place, you're already not able to fill out a pretty important part of your job application. And then, so you're homeless. Whoever your potential employer is going to then kind of be thinking about these things. Well, are they going to be able to get to work on time? Are they going to be able to have presentable clothing to wear? Are we going to have to worry about their personal hygiene, scaring off customers, or alienating their coworkers, whatever job situation you're applying for? And so these are massive strikes against you right off the jump. And so that was part of the kind of stigma of being homeless that I had certainly never thought of. And I know a lot of people also don't. I mean, I didn't go out of my way to like be a shithead to people asking for money, but it was just a thing that had never occurred to me that, oh, well, it would be difficult for someone completely without a roof over their head to be able to walk into a place and start working and get a job and pull themselves out of that situation. And so we'll get into kind of more of the political aspects affecting this in a little bit, but that was what really affected me. And then coming to know that some of these people that face this stigma of being homeless aren't, in fact, the majority of them, people like to think that, well, homeless people are either just crazy or addicted to drugs or both, and that's why. And when you feel that way about a group of people, it's very easy to sweep it under the rug and be like, well, no, just get rid of them. We'll applaud the, let's see if I can find the picture here. We'll applaud the police officers that, confiscate these people's belongings and tear down their tent cities, and they just make them go somewhere else. And then people are like, oh, well, we solved the problem of homelessness in our community. Yay, us. But really nothing of the sort got accomplished. You just put your thumb down further on a group of people that was already hurting pretty bad. And so yeah, that's why we're here talking tonight about this, because there is stuff you can do, and part of it, a major part of it, is just being aware that a lot of people don't choose that. The vast majority of them don't. And it is beginning to affect many, many, many more people for various socioeconomic reasons that we'll get into in just a minute. But I wanted to present that first because it's a way of thinking that a lot of people don't get. We did by beginning to work at a place that was actively involved in that. And so, yeah, man, what did you take away from working at LAYN?
Well, I really loved it. I really did.
I know you had a lot of passion for it, man. That's why I wanted to talk to you tonight. Mason here was one of the, I was not very good at my job. They let me go pretty quick, but Mason was one of the top collectors. Just by putting out that vibe he was talking about. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was very interesting. What were some of the good experiences you had, man?
Well, I got to run into people who were the opposite of that energy that I just talked about.
Right.
There is another side of that spectrum.
For sure.
And I got to see that and experience it and be with those people who had a full heart. Like the creator of Surfrider Foundation. I ran into her in front of Erewhon, and we talked for 15 minutes.
Oh, really?
About what her thing was and how cool it was. She takes these kids out surfing that have no home, no parents, no anything, and they have a family for them within that foundation, which really struck me.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome.
I mean, and on top of that, just running into the farmer from Babe the Pig.
Oh yeah.
the farmer, and I really I cry every time I watch that movie, and I was able to just tell him that I appreciate what he did.
Yeah.
And that what he was a part of, I really appreciate. He gave me $175 twice. He gave me the full donation. Every time he saw me, he gave me the full donation.
Right. Yeah, and there were basic tiers of donation that $5, and they had it calculated out pretty well. $5 would feed one of the kids in their shelters for a day. $175 would get a kid off of the street in the shelter for I forget exactly how long, but it was a week or two, and they would get a full medical checkup, and that would start them on the road to not being homeless anymore. I think that it was 90% of the kids that they were able to pick up through their outreach program didn't get back on the street. And a lot of that is just being able to have a roof over your head. Then you can enroll in school. Generally speaking, people are a lot more willing to donate clothing and food than they are hard currency. And it comes from paranoia, I think. A lot of people are they're just going to spend it on booze or, and a lot of these kids were facing a lot of these really, horrific conditions like drug addiction or, anything else under the sun, doing whatever they needed to do to get money to eat. And so a few figures that go along with this, and these are not particularly recent, these are a couple years old, but in the LA area alone, at any given time, there are about 80 to 100,000 homeless people in the Los Angeles area, 10,000 of which are unaccompanied children. That's a pretty big deal, man. Now that was the target demographic of the shelters that we were doing fundraising for. But for all of the great work that those shelters did, they were able to house, I think it was 200 or something like that at any given time. And so great effort, woefully understaffed and, lacking in bed space. And And that's just in Los Angeles alone. High population urban areas across the country see similar numbers to that. And nationwide, again, and this is at any given time, this is not representing the number of people that have experienced homelessness for a few months or something like that, but this is like the number that are always out there. Nationwide, that number tops about 1.6 million, and some of the figures go as high as 2.5 to 3 million. And once you get into those kind of numbers, we're talking about like a full percent of the American population. And that sucks. Let's see, what else? What other figures do we have here, man?
Well, the one that really struck me said 32% have bachelor's degree or more.
Yeah.
That caught me in a weird way.
Yeah, because, again, and this goes into another stereotype of being homeless, is that, well, why don't you just go get back into school? A lot of these people, a full third, as it turns out, a third of homeless adults have higher education, like bachelor's degrees or higher. So this is not a problem for the kid that dropped out of school or the kid that ran away from home that's now a full-grown adult and just, still not able to pull themselves out of the situation that they put themselves in. These are people that got a degree. 30% of the homeless adults in this country have higher education, maybe even a higher education than you. Think about that. And so, yeah, a huge number of these people, upwards of 70%, do not because they don't have a mailing address where they can collect an unemployment check or a benefit card or whatever that is. They don't receive the benefits that would be entitled to them. So any of the arguments about, well, these people are a drain on society, well, they're not really. They're not, at least they're not drawing from the benefits that would be available to them based on their financial situation if they had a mailbox. So that's not going on either. And so, well, what do we do? I don't know, but be aware that these figures that you're being told on mass media, being relieved when they do that to homeless people and confiscate their shit and tear down the places where they live, that's not right. It would be like if I feel like if you look at the scale of where the normal American that is barely able to afford their rent versus the homeless person, and that kind of economic disparity, that same economic disparity exists from this person to like the top, 2-3%. And so what if they decided that, we don't like seeing all of these tiny little houses, we want to remove all of these people and, make bigger mansions for us. And we'll just shoehorn you out of the area, or we'll pass legislation that makes homelessness illegal, and we'll put them all in prison where even more horrible things happen to them. It would be like if someone did that to you, and would you appreciate it? Like,
well,
none too much, I would imagine.
No.
I don't know, Mason, what would you do?
About what?
Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously we have this huge problem. There is a lot of, there's a reason for it. Like, this kind of homelessness does not occur in other parts of the developed world that we would consider our equals, right? Because we're the greatest nation on earth, supposedly.
Okay.
and other nations that that we feel are on similar social economic standing, they don't have these problems. They don't have millions of their population homeless.
Right.
So, I don't know. Do you have any ideas? Like, what should be done instead of like sweeping these people under the rug and just forcing them into other areas that aren't as covered by the media?
Right. Well, I do have an idea.
Yeah, sure, man. Lay it on us.
Okay. So I believe we can scare the richest people in America. I think they're already a little scared. Just like I saw a group of people who looked homeless in front of the AM PM just tonight, and that was a little scary. They were all hovering around the entrance, and the more of these people that keep rising up because of these policies, and I'm not an expert. I don't know why there's so many homeless people in this country and not in other countries. Like, I don't know why. It has something to do with politics and the way our government's run, whatever. But the point is what you said. Like, we have so many more, and it's rising like every day. And they love money. Rich people like money. And you say, hey, look, that condo you own, that everything you own is all going to be pointless once they're bursting out of the seams. Like, this group of people, we all see it. We all go downtown, we see tent cities popping up everywhere. We try to, I feel like what we are is like putting our hands over all the cracks and trying to but it's growing more and more and more. And at some point we can't do that anymore.
You're bailing out water. One person's trying to bail water out of a sinking ship, and someone else is trying to put their hands over the cracks in it.
Yeah, just like, it's just gonna keep bubbling up more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're hinting at is that any time in the past when economic disparity has reached these levels, at a certain point, it's like a giant game of Jenga. When you pull the base out of something, you suck up all of the wealth out of the bottom that people could use to, stay in their homes, and you put it on the top and you make a little pyramid out of it. Eventually, that system, that structure gets top heavy. And I'm using Mason's example here. It gets top heavy and it collapses. This has happened many, many times in the past. This is not alarmist talk. This is not, my usual conspiracy theory rant. This is look in a damn history book, and how many revolutions have there been for this exact reason? And the answer is lots, a shit ton over the past, few thousand years.
Well, like, the best example is, like, if you own, say, a condo and you collect rent every month, what happens? And cops are taking more and more of a backseat to helping us. I don't know if you have personal stories, but I have plenty, especially talking to people in my Uber rides. Like, just today, even, like, the lack of police presence when their job is to help you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's taken such a turn.
Yeah, no, I've been collecting these stories both personally and from other people that if they're not able to write you a ticket and extort money from you for something, they're not there.
Yeah, no. They either don't come at all or they come way late. Way late.
Yeah, they'll show up after, the next day after your house gets broken into, even though you called them while it was going on.
Yes.
And yeah, I agree with you 100%. The people who are supposed to be in authority and sticking up for the rights of the citizens, right? Like there's no caveat to it. It's not the privileged citizens. They're supposed to protect and serve all of the citizens, but yet we see them doing this,
Right.
And there will come a point when a army of homeless people goes and burns down Beverly Hills.
Well, exactly. The point I was making is that police presence is changing, and so now you have that condo that you worked so hard to get. You worked your whole life. You made the payments, paid it off.
Right.
And now, a man with a gun and his friends are now in there, and they say, "I'm not going to pay you." And you can't say anything. That's it. That's the end of it. It's like unless you have more guns or whatever, like that's the end of that conversation.
Yeah, you get escalation, and even if there's not escalation, even if it's just a, hey man, I can't afford to pay this rent anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move back in with my folks or whatever. Either way, you're not collecting that money for rent anymore, assuming that no one else has the money to pay your rent either. And as certain areas go downhill economically, that's what happens.
Right.
And so, the person that's like, oh, I'm a go-getter, I'm an entrepreneur, I own property, all of that becomes useless when there's no one around to buy the product or service that you sell. And so this gets into kind of the political aspects of it, that these arguments against the minimum wage increase and, well, you're going to have to lay off people. Well, they don't have to. They will, to protect their hoarding of wealth. But the truth of the matter is they don't have to. And if the minimum wage were indicative or in keeping with its original spirit, which was a basic living wage, that, okay, if you're not a skilled laborer, if you're not a highly educated person, you can still get this level of job and you can have a roof over your head. You can pay public transportation, or you can make a modest car payment. You can take care of your life expenditures and not go bankrupt doing so. But now, we see that another figure I found was, this is across the country now, to simply, and this is most areas, not high cost of living areas like LA or New York, but average across the country, the average person has to has to work between 70 and 90 hours a month just to pay their rent. That's just to keep a mortgage or a house roof over your head. That's not putting food in your belly. That's not paying your car payment. It's not helping you achieve higher education so that you can better your socioeconomic standing. That's just so you can exist and not be exposed to the elements on the planet you were born on.
Well,
yeah, I know, it's bumming me out too.
we're getting squeezed, I think there's an older guy. I play volleyball at the pier, Santa Monica Pier, and there's hot dog stick right there.
Oh, okay.
And there's an older guy that was around, 50 years ago, and he explained the cost of a lemonade and what minimum wage was. And, the difference, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like $1.25 minimum wage. A lemonade cost 25 cents.
Yeah, so you worked 6 minutes or 10 minutes or something to buy the lemonade at the time?
Yeah, and today, minimum wage is, $59.
I think nationwide federal is still $7.50.
Really?
I believe, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go with $7.50 then, and a lemonade costs $5.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that explains everything, kind of. Like, the amount that we cost, the amount of cost in that lemonade compared to the minimum wage, like, that is changed to, they're now taking almost all of it. You know, and that goes, like, that's going across the board. Like, we could just say lemonade, but it's like everything.
Yeah, and, you know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't see the political spectrum changing. You know, I mean, I see this race for president closing down to Hillary and Trump, and I don't see either one of them helping that situation. I don't know that any of the other candidates would have, you know, or at least none of the ones that are allowed to participate in the presidential debates. You guys realize there are more than two political parties, right? There's like a bunch and only two of them get to participate because we have democracy here. And yeah, and all of this is to, and I hate to shoehorn it in at the end, but I mean, this is not even to say anything about homeless veterans, of which there are tens of thousands, you know, in the country that are not getting the benefits they deserve for putting on a uniform and serving their country. And, you know, this is not difficult math, you guys. This is a problem that's getting way worse. There is nothing being done to make it better. And like when you consider that, like, we had this huge housing burst, right? The floor fell out of the housing markets because the banks were giving houses away to people who couldn't afford them. But there are now more vacant homes in this country than there are homeless people. Despite this ridiculous number of homeless people that there are still more empty houses. Now, if we lived in a socially progressive area, like, I don't know. I just don't see this happening in places like Europe. I'm not saying their system is perfect, but they don't have the massive homeless populations that we do. And it kind of speaks to other social ills like crime. The people that don't have anything and can't get what they need are going to do whatever it takes to get it. Doesn't make it excusable, but it does make it understandable. And that is a system issue that needs, you know, the system needs to be turned off and turned back on again, maybe, I think. I don't know what that means or what it implies, but I do know it needs to happen. So, all right, you guys, as it always happens, we're running out of time. This was a big one for me, and I wanted to bring up, and I know he's a man of few words, but I know he feels strongly about this stuff, so I'm glad I was able to have Mason on to talk to me about it. Thank you again for coming on. And you guys, the first step is, if you had any of these notions about like, fuck those people, I don't know, hopefully, you know, some of the stats and figures, hopefully you know, very brief introduction to the very real, you know, psychological and social stigma of being homeless will, you know, help change the way you think about these things. Because we are, at the end of the day, all here to help walk each other home. I think that was Ron Doss that said that, right? So anyways, we'll catch you next time. We'll probably be talking about more weird stuff, or it'll be political. I don't know, who's to say. Anyways, in the meantime, wherever you're going, get there safe, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.